in setting this up. We are, to stay 6 feet apart, so we're okay as we speak to actually remove our masks if we want to, so we can project a little bit better. And we want to acknowledge that Marilee and Shannon are both excused today. Marilee had a golf tournament she had to run, so she'll be racing over to join us at the end, and then Shannon had a prior commitment. We have Michael joining us remotely, and I believe Debbie is also joining us remotely, and we send our love and best wishes and thoughts to Debbie and this time of recovery for her. Everyone else is largely live streaming for the conference, and so I believe it's just the cabinet and the trustees. I have a fairly full agenda today, and so again, I think we have microphones working. I can't tell, is it sounding okay? Can everyone hear okay? So we don't need to shout.
There's no microphones.
There's microphones on the tables, 3 microphones, and then like that.
Do they broadcast in the room or just record?
They'll broadcast. Yeah.
In the room.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, good.
Yeah, that corner view on the screen, that's what YouTube sees. Everyone watching virtually.
Okay, wonderful. Michael, maybe you can give us a thumbs up if you can see us okay, or hear us okay. All right, we got it.
Philip back there is going to move the camera for us, so we'll have live
Wonderful.
coverage.
Right, yeah, Wi-Fi password is summertime fun. Summertime fun all together in the midst of COVID. So.
And don't tell anybody.
Yeah, so now that's broadcast.
Yeah, so much for that.
No, it's on all the board.
Well, I have. That is definitely not. Definitely a better information. Yeah, we got some technology problems.
Too many mics.
Marvin, are you muted?
Yeah. I am.
Interesting.
Is that a problem just because I'm on?
Hey, Philip, this is James in the Operations Center. Looks like your proximity might be picking up as long as he has his mic on.
Gotcha.
You just got to mute the mic.
Okay, I think we're good.
All right, everything okay now? Sounds like it. All right, we have a fairly full agenda today, quite a few actions. We only have, I believe, one 401 to deal with today. So let us go ahead and begin. Jody, anything else you wanted to cover before we started?
No, it's just good to see everybody in person, even though we're distant. It's so good to be here with everybody. So.
And I think that our last meeting, Newman, we were electronic, but this is your first formal face-to-face meeting, correct? Yes. Newman, why don't you just stand up for 1 second? This is our new student body president. Newman's an amazing individual that we're just so grateful to have part of the board for this next year. Why don't you just introduce yourself really quickly, Newman?
Sure. Well, I don't think I know any of you. My name is Newman Kake. I'm from Mali, West Africa. I'm studying business administration and philosophy, and I'm a senior. And new student president.
We're thrilled to have you. And Newman will do a wonderful job. Why don't you share quickly your 3 initiatives that you've presented to your cabinet and.
Okay, so this year, me and my team have decided to set 3 goals for us to work on it this year. All of them are pretty exciting things. First one is that together with our teachers, we encourage students to wear red on Fridays and also masks since we are in the pandemic. Second is intentionally inclusiveness, meaning each of us, 3 days, each of us will meet 3 students per day, all people in the student leadership and involvement. We're just going to find out what the students are struggling, what they like about Southern Utah University, what they're struggling, and then I'm going to summarize that and come to prepare those come with, come prepared with this feedback to share with you. Last is the listening leaders. We listen to our students and make sure that the decision that the school is making is also matching the students' interest. So these are a few things that me and my team have decided this year to focus on.
Thank you, Newman. We look forward to supporting you, as we know the students are our #1 consideration in making critical decisions, so we'll look forward to supporting you. Let's just begin by the minutes from last board meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes or any additional questions that need to be addressed? All right, it's proposed then we approve the minutes from last meeting because I have some for also Jody. Could I have a second? Newman? And the minutes are approved from last meeting. Our first agenda item is policy 5.3. Oh, we have to vote. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that motion carried. Thank you, Jody. Our first agenda item is policy 5.3, university authorized international travel, and it looks like Provost Anderson, you're covering that one?
Yes, I am. Thank you for the opportunity to be here to present this policy adjustment to you. We have Dr. Stephen Allen here, also who leads our international efforts, and he's here to answer any difficult questions. I'll take the easy ones. This policy change is largely driven by a change with the way the State Department categorizes different countries or different areas throughout the world regarding their safety. They now categorize parts of the world at 4 different levels, and we rewrote this policy to match those 4 levels. We don't authorize travel to international areas who are designated as level 4, which is the do not travel designation. And level 3 requires, which is reconsidered travel, requires the president board approval. Level 1 and level 2 run through our international affairs office. This has to do with only university-sponsored travel. So if a student is going out under our auspices to study at another institution, it would follow under this policy. If a program director is taking a group of students overseas, they also would fall under this policy. Or if a faculty or staff member is traveling internationally to build relations or to present research, they also fall under this policy. But those are the main changes to the policy, just to align it with the current State Department leveling ideas of areas around the world. I'm glad to take any questions about the update on this policy.
In the event of this COVID situation where we had individuals in Italy, which is not level 1 or 3 or 4, but maybe even a 1 or 2, but there's a crisis that erupts. How does it relate to that situation? And then the situation where some of the students chose to remain in Italy despite our counsel and desire to bring them back. How are we covered there?
Very good question. I'll let Dr. Allen address that.
Yeah, on the very last page of the policy, talks about an emergency response team that's comprised of a variety of people: police, risk management, someone the president would designate, international affairs, student affairs, general counsel, director of learning abroad, and director of marketing communications. So if there's an emergency that happens, this will be the team that will tackle that. In light of our group in Italy, these are adults. When we officially pulled the trip, we bought a ticket, but we didn't force them to get on the plane. And so in situations like that, they do have their agency, but as the emergency response team, that was what we determined to bring back the group, buy the ticket, encourage, but in the end, it's the student's choice. Some did stay.
Okay.
Did that get to your question?
It did. Thank you, Stephen. Are there any additional questions or comments? All right. It's been proposed then that we move forward on policy 5.30 on university authorized international travel. Would someone put forward a motion, please? Mindy Kay put forward the motion. Is there a second? Okay, Sydney put forward the second. Any more discussion on the item? Okay, I will proceed with the vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, this resolution passed, or this action passed unanimously. So now we'll proceed to a little more dicey one, policy 5.60, sexual misconduct, and it looks like this is Anne Marie Allen's. And we should also mention and congratulate Anne Marie. Anne Marie was just assigned to be the judge of the district. And so, or did I get that correct?
Yes.
Assigned?
Thank you. Well, appointed.
Appointed, okay. Well, we congratulate you, and we'll dearly miss you for sure.
Well, the feeling is mutual. I should tell you that when I spoke with the governor, he said, do you really want to leave SUU? Because that's such a great place. And it was very sad to leave. Thank you all. So as it relates to this policy, this is our new, it's called our sexual misconduct policy, but it's our Title IX policy. And here's what's going on with Title IX. So the Department of Ed has been working on new Title IX regulations for the past couple of years. And they chose this summer, during all the mess of COVID-19, to enact these new regulations that are some of the most complex regulations ever to come out of Department of Higher Ed in one at one time. So it was very difficult for us to quickly rewrite our policy, which is why it's been fast-tracked to you. It was sent out for a comment period, and we feel really good about the condition that this policy is in. But it is an entire rewrite of our existing Title IX policy. So just a very brief amount of background. The Title IX regulations have been quite broad in the last few years in terms of the university's obligations. What these new regulations do is they contract the scope of our responsibility under Title IX a little bit. So where we were obligated here, it's brought the scope of our obligations here. But in these situations where we are obligated, it makes our obligations much, much more robust and more complex and more legalistic. You're going to see a requirement for a quasi-court type system where we have witnesses and rulings on evidence and all those kinds of things. But that's not an SUU creation. That's a requirement of the new Title IX regulations. So this has changed the way that we're going to have to do training. This has changed some of our needs relative to some personnel that are going to have to be involved in this quasi-court type process. But we have, we're managing it well. I have Lucia Malloy, who is in my office here, who oversees Title IX. She has had a great deal of involvement in putting this policy together. And so she's going to ensure our compliance moving forward, and she is absolutely up to the task. So we can certainly take questions. I may defer some of those to Lucia, but that's a basic background on why we've brought this Title IX policy back before the trustees.
So is this, it's in our packet. Is this drafted by us, me and you, the SUU? Or is this really the language that's in the regulations that we basically adopt?
So I'm gonna let Lucia take that question.
So some of it is right from regulations, most of the definitions come from 34 CFR Part 106, which is regulations that cover Title IX. And a lot of the requirements actually do come straight from regulations. But the process and how we're going to implement it, we drafted that in conjunction with the Office of General Counsel for all of the schools in Utah. We formed a subcommittee drafted this policy, we drafted a model policy, which was given to all of the institutions of higher education in Utah. And then each institution was able to modify it to match their circumstances. So the result you see in front of you is the new regulations, but it's also a work from all the institutions in the state of Utah modified to fit our circumstances here.
How much have we changed it, I guess, since the order we getting since we brought adoption to that? What was that, the amalgamation or that collaborative effort?
So if you look at the policies from across the state, they are going to look a little bit different. For one, you can see things like the University of Utah has a lot more resources in their Title IX than any other institution in the state of Utah, with the exception of BYU, but they're private. So they're going to have a lot more ability to do things according to their own systems. So theirs doesn't change quite as much, but this model policy will be pretty obvious in schools like SU, UVU, Snow College, the technical colleges, Weber. You'll see that they're going to be fairly similar because of this model.
Then we denominate, but how different is this than what we did?
What we try to do is take what we have been doing and fit it into the new regulations. So it's going to be quite a bit different because the new regulations are quite a bit different. It's much more legalistic and process heavy than the old regulation or our old policy was. And that's because before these new regulations, the policy was really more interpretive and there were guidelines, but there were no regulations, no hard and fast rules. These new regulations are hard and fast rules. The DOE made very clear in the preamble to the new regulations that they consider these new regulations to carry the force of law and that they will have the Office of Civil Rights enforce these new regulations. And they're set up to be very legalistic, very due process. And so our policy is much more process heavy than it was before. So if you compare the two, they're different in that way. But as far as what the students will experience when they come to talk to Title IX, it'll be very similar to what it was before. They're still going to have that initial contact when they come meet with Title IX. The supportive measures, the resources, all that will still be offered from the beginning and all the way through the process, not access to all of that. Where they'll see changes is just that they'll have to be more written documentation than there was before. And they'll see a lot more things like written notices, what step in the process they're in. And then we have that live hearing, and that's going to be new for everybody. We haven't really done that under SU's policy before. It's required now by the regulations. So that will probably be the biggest thing the students will notice as a difference. Is that they will, if they go through the formal investigation, at the end of that, we're required to have a live hearing, which will be pseudo trial, pseudo court-like. They'll have advisors that will be there with the hearing officer. We are required to allow cross-examination, which has never really been part of the Title IX before, so that will make it feel a lot more realistic, a lot more confident.
You feel like there are going to be opportunities for us to have either taken on more liability because of all these hoops we have to jump through, we missed something, somewhere along the line, we're going to have more exposure, now you're going to grant we have some compliance issues, you just have to comply with this. But the places you're concerned about, we're going to have more exposure because we have checked every single box the right way. And so how would we, that's probably that question to answer. How are we protecting ourselves?
It's a fair one. So I actually think as far as liability goes, this is a lot clearer than it used to be. Because of the general guidelines and the allowed differences between every school, it was hard to know when you'd had a reasonable response to a complaint. But these new regulations are very clear that the liability of the school starts at the moment the formal complaint is filed. And it outlines what a school must do once that formal complaint is filed. Before that, there's not actually a lot of liability for the school. And the new regulations in the DOE set the floor for what's required for the schools. And that floor is, did we act reasonably? So for someone to bring liability against us, they have to show that we're clearly unreasonable in our response. As far as liability goes, this is a lot clearer. It shows, you only have to show that our response was reasonable, or that we weren't clearly unreasonable. And if we follow the procedure that's set out by the department, we can pretty easily meet that reasonable response. So it actually gives us a little protection for liability generally, but you're right, we could lose some of that protection if we don't check those boxes, which is why this process, if you look at it, is 28 pages long.
That's what I'm thinking, because someone's gonna say, hey, you didn't follow the process, therefore, you know, and so we'll have to, that's a challenge, but.
It is a challenge, which is why they also say in the preamble to the regulations that they put that burden on the Title IX coordinator for every school. But it's the job and the responsibility of the Title IX coordinator to make sure that these regulations are effectively implemented. Which is why Title IX coordinators like myself, this actually puts a lot more burden on us than we previously had. But it does require a little bit of putting the process in place and making steps along the way so that we can check those and show and document that we check those. So we'll have to do things like create standard notice forms. Say, we're sending out notice to all the parties that we're at this point in the procedure, here are your rights. And when we get to the next step, we send out another notice that says we're at this point in the procedure, here are your rights. So it will be a lot more formulaic, a lot more process heavy than it was.
Jody?
Speaking of Title coordinator, how do students know? And is there a process in which students are informed about the Title IX within that freshman orientation? Is there something they have to read for a summary? Is there something that says they have to accept what they have? Or is the whole process for them understanding? And then if there's something, a complaint or a file or something, how do they know where to go?
So that's a good question. One of the biggest changes is that now we have to put the Title IX information on every outgoing communication we have with students and employees. As far as on the application, there has to be a link that will take, at least a link that will take you back to the Title IX page. It has to be in our catalog. It has to be on our website. In almost every area where the students have access and go to look for information, there has to be at least a link or information about Title IX.
And we're in brief explanations of what Title IX means because somebody doesn't even know what it is.
Yeah. So it's required under state law that we give this training to all incoming freshmen as part of their orientation. They have to complete it. In fact, I've been getting at least 20 emails a day about freshmen who are trying to complete it and haven't gone to one or another. So all incoming freshmen have to receive this training as part of their orientation. It has to be marked off. Any student that engages in any recognized student organization under state law is required to do this training annually. And all employees are required to do it annually. That's one of the big differences between these new regulations and the old guidelines. It's clear now, there was a little bit of a question before about whether Title IX covered purely employment situations. It is clear now that it does. Title IX covers any association with federally funded recipients. So even situations where an employee is having trouble with another employee or an employee is having trouble with a vendor, if it's sex-based discrimination or harassment, it falls under Title IX, which is why we have to make that information available. We have to post it around campus as well.
Let me supplement that, Jody, and just say that we have been doing training on Title IX for the last several years for all students and employees, both a 30-minute online kind of really accessible training, like you're talking about, an accessible summary, and a live hour-long training at freshman orientation with a coordinator where they, meet the students and introduce themselves and talk about where the office is located and all those things. So we have done this kind of presentation in a number of ways so that we can really raise awareness.
Two of the specific details as I read through this that at least raised questions for me was on the who must report section, and was actually surprised that the only one responsible is the president, his direct reports, the supervisor, let's see, vice presidents, and no one else was required to report. Could you comment on that briefly?
So that actually comes out of the new regulations. And it's something that as a university, if we want to change, we can, but it goes back to the question on liability. So the new regulations talk about the mandatory reporters are only those who have the ability to implement or the authority to implement sanctions change on behalf of the university. And one of the reasons they did this, it's different than it is through K through 12. K through 12 is still every employee is a mandatory reporter. But they changed it at the collegiate level. One of the reasons they did that is because they said that college students are adults for the most part. And they're going to give them the ability to decide if they want to confide in somebody in a way that they don't want reported back to Title IX. So they wanted to give college students a little more ability to say, listen, I just want to talk to somebody and confide in somebody. I don't want process, I don't want anything, I just want to talk. And I want to talk to the person of my choice. I don't want to have to go seek out somebody that I don't trust because they might not have to report me. So the Department of Ed actually changed that to allow college students a little more autonomy and a little more choice as to what they want to do with their complaints, how they want to apply those, and how they want to deal with it. And so that's one of the reasons. So what's in the policy right now is the bare minimum that the university is required to do. And we can change that. If SU feels like, no, we want to have many more mandatory reporters than what's required of the regulations, we can do that. But what that does is anybody who's a mandatory reporter who's on notice, they assume the university itself is on notice. So if we make faculty members all mandatory reporters, anybody who reports to a faculty member, they assume the university.
Yeah, it's a sticky wicket because either way it could go back. I mean, someone could come back, as we've seen from prior cases, and say, hey, the university didn't do what they could have done to protect it. We may want to watch that one. My second one, and then I'll let others ask questions, was this section 10B, emergency removal. The university may remove a respondent from university education program activities on an emergency basis. And I just, the potential concern, making sure we don't overreach and respond too quickly on that, we could also expose a lot of liability. So hoping that there was no process of how that emergency removal would occur. We want to make sure that that's guarded carefully.
So what the regulations require, and we tried to capture in there, but we can alter it if we feel like that's not enough. They say that on an emergency basis, when we're worried about the safety or well-being of faculty, students, university, we can remove a person from participation, but then we have to immediately give them notice and an opportunity to contest that. It has to be immediate after the removal. So it's kind of like if you're comparing it to Title
The question is who decides the removal?
So if you look at earlier, there's a committee that's required.
Okay.
The SART committee, the Central Social Response Team. They're given the authority to make that determination in consultation with their really interested parties. So
Okay, so you feel pretty comfortable there.
I do feel pretty comfortable there, but this is all really new. We might try this for a year and realize this isn't working as well as we thought, or I should be reevaluate it a little bit. Let me just supplement that.
I guess the comment I'd make is this is a very delicate one, and it's probably why we're all set up a little bit, because it's not like our tennis shoes that we can switch out really easily when the problem arises.
It's one of the most liability sensitive areas, and we've dealt with this in the past. And I think part of what's useful about the small committee approach is that you're not going to have one person who could, unwittingly go rogue or, take an extreme response. And that kind of decision is going to be made in consultation with legal counsel and with an eye toward all of the competing responsibilities and with an eye toward liability in every direction.
It's true, and I guess I should say that SAR committee has representatives of the Title IX coordinator, a representative from student affairs, a representative from HR, a representative from the faculty, and a representative from athletics. And actually, our military group here on campus is also Davidson, a representative for that as well. So we try to have a representative from the big groups on campus so that we are not using this emergency removal lightly, and that we're not doing it in such a way that disadvantaging any group on campus, or using it as a weapon.
Okay, thank you. All right, trustees, any other questions? Michael, do you have any questions?
No, I think, I mean, we're changing it to stay in compliance, so I think that's fine.
All right, Vance, Mindy K, Beverly, anyone, we're all good? Newman.
This new information is available for returning students to review. Was that?
Yes, it will be made available to other students for review as well as we can post it on the website.
And do you think that would be?
As soon as we get it approved here, I think we can put it up on the policy website. And then we're working on the Title IX website. There are a lot more requirements for what has to be posted on our Title IX website. So we're going to have to review that and revamp it. They're going to work on it right now. They're still working on getting everything up for the online teaching and trying to get that ready for the fall. So the Title IX website itself will probably not be fully operational until the beginning of the fall semester. But we'll make sure that students have access to this.
Thank you very much, Anne Marie and Lucia, for your important work on this. Okay, it's been proposed that we approve policy 5.6 on sexual misconduct. Would someone put forward a motion to approve that? Okay, Beverly puts forward the motion. Michael with the second. Is there any more discussion? If no more discussion, let's proceed with the vote. All in favor of approving this motion? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, let it be noted that section or policy 5.6 on sexual misconduct passed unanimously. And now let's move on to a little bit more pleasant policy, should we? 6.46 academic scheduling and calendar, and I think you're back on published.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate you considering changes to policy 6.46. This is a very important policy because it strikes right at the heart of what we do, and that is teach students. Very important when the student shows up on campus that they know which courses they need to take to complete the degree program they've chosen. They also need to know when those courses will be offered and the schedule of those that will be offered throughout the semesters. Making several modifications to this academic scheduling and calendar policy, both to help students know what they should do earlier in the advanced, at an earlier stage through their degree program, and also to make sure that our calendar is sequenced with the new 3-year degree, which we're pushing across campus. So these modifications include a move from looking at scheduling at the department level to the program level. So with each program, not only at the department level, but each program will know which courses are offered when, so students can progress through a program. We also have asked all programs to submit a full year calendar of upcoming courses by December, as well as complete any changes to academic programs by December. So our new catalog comes out, we start to register for fall semester. Students will know what will happen regarding courses for both fall, spring, and summer semesters of the coming year. Previously, we've been on kind of a rolling semester cycle. We roll one out, and then we roll the next. We got ready to register. We're now going to plan on a full year ahead of time. As an outcome of that, you'll see, I think at the September meeting, a new academic calendar that matches 3 almost exactly equal semesters throughout the year, each would equal 7-week and 14-week sessions that match face-to-face and online. So students flow in and out of different teaching modalities, they'll be on the same cycle, the same schedule. So that'll be coming in September. It's not part of the current policy, but is an outcome of these changes. Next, we also added in the scheduling sequence that the first right to schedule a space will be those courses that need an area that has fixed equipment. So laboratories and those things will be scheduled by the course and have to be taught in that fixed space before any other course can use that space. We're also giving preference to course sizes that fill at least 75% of the seats within a fixed space. By doing that, it'll increase our physical facilities utilization rates and help us use our resources more wisely. So those are the main changes to the academic scheduling calendar policy 6146. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Provost. What questions, trustees?
Who thought of this?
It's been, a lot of this work was done before I got here. I'd like to recognize Dr. James Sage, who's here with us, Associate Provost, who led the effort across campus. It's been a monumental effort, for sure.
This is so intuitive. I'm shocked we haven't done it before now, so kudos to whoever has been working on this. Good job.
We've got big plans for implementing the policy. This fall, we'll ask every program to create 3- and 4-year schedules, both for face-to-face and those that are also offered online. So a student can print out a PDF as soon as they show up on campus and know exactly what classes they need to take each semester, whether they want to finish in 3 or 4 years. Put it on their post and send it to their grandma and say, you check it off with me and we'll work through this and get you done.
Well, what I think I love the most is that you're letting the financial influencers know what's going on too, because I loved my time at SUU. I loved my time, probably longer than I should have loved my time. And my parents probably could have benefited greatly from this program.
There's a story in there.
A little too much for you.
Yeah.
The only question that I had was F1 that talked about the academic calendar for Southern Utah is developed by a committee led by a designee from the provost's office. Just wanted to make sure that we had sufficient, deep, and more than adequate representation from the faculty and the Senate.
We certainly do. Dr. Sage, you want to talk about the representation, how that committee works?
Sure. That committee is known as the Ad Hoc Academic Calendar Planning Committee. It's a mouthful, that ACPC.
The ad hoc didn't do it a lot.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Lowercase.
We're moving in the wrong direction here.
So we typically meet every 3 years. It includes representation from student affairs. So Dr. Tippett and his office is represented, our president of the Faculty Senate, our president of the Staff Association, myself, I'm the ringleader of the group. I call us together and keep us on track. I also include the academic VP from SUUSA, the Shakespeare Festival, housing, athletics. Take a peek now. There is a budget and finance person. Last time we met, it was Daniel Bischoff we included on that. And then we actually encourage all of those people to share it widely in their groups to get feedback and to get input. So we believe the more eyes on that calendar, the better, because it really is serving the entire campus, even though the heart of it is academics. We know that we have an entire city here on campus surrounding us. So yeah.
I would just suggest that the faculty senate should make sure that they're very actively involved in the leadership from that. So really a buy-in and a major driver of that. I know that was very sensitive in the past. So.
Well, I'm happy to say that this particular calendar you'll see in another month actually originated with Faculty Senate. They brought it, they were the ones who had the first chance at adjusting it, and I again was part of that group and I coached them along as best I could. So by the time the Academic Calendar Planning Committee is receiving it, I think it's spent about 8 months going through faculty senate and back and forth. That's why it's version 18.0. You'll see next month.
I love the way James describes the challenge. 365.25 days. Anyway,
Yeah, at some point I thought changing to a month calendar would be easier. So if we could just change the months and, the Gregorian calendar, I mean, come on, we could do better than that. So
it's 12 months, different number of days, 365.25 days per year, plus federal and state holidays.
Right.
It's actually really complicated.
Federal compliance, accreditation.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for your work on that. Any other questions from the trustees? All right, propose then we move forward with 6.46, academic scheduling and calendar year. Would someone put forward a motion, please? Vance put forward a motion. Is there a second? Jody put forward a second. Any more discussion? If not, let's proceed with the vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None opposed. Let it be noted that the outcome of this was all unanimous to approve policy 6.46, academic scheduling and calendaring. And it looks like you're still on, Provost Anderson. 6.70, requirement to complete training in responsibility conduct of research.
So this policy outlines who is required and who is strongly suggested to complete training before they conduct research. We do have an institutional review board that reviews research projects before they're conducted. This has to do with the training that we provide them and when we require and when we strongly suggest it. There are many outside agencies that fund research on campus. Many of those require research. Our prior policy outlined that research had to be conducted and completed through one specific vendor. We've removed all references to a specific vendor and just now allow faculty members to choose from a variety of options in conducting this training. But often when we submit research grants, we have to provide evidence that the primary investigator of research grant has completed the research to us to make sure that they are aware of what their commitment is. Those are the main changes to this policy. So they're relatively minor.
Okay, what questions do we have?
Is this similar language to what we do for procurement purposes?
Yes.
That looked pretty straightforward. Okay, if there's no additional questions, we'll proceed with the vote. Would someone put forward a motion, please? Newman, put forward the motion. Would someone offer a second, please? Okay, Sydney put forward a second. Any more discussion? If not, proceed with the vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Unopposed? The action passed unanimously. And so let's proceed now to policy 6.71, disclosure of financial interests related to sponsored projects.
So this policy is another update to our research section and the requirements that are placed on faculty who conduct research or staff who conduct research. Like we've all read many cases fairly recently across the country where academics were participating in research and also getting paid by the company that they were doing research for. That presents a very serious research integrity issue. And so this policy outlines that it's not only a conflict of interest between the researcher, but it can be a conflict of interest between any member of the researcher's family. And that is defined within the policy, so that you can't simply have a company hire someone in your family, pay them well, and then allow you to do the research without first disclosing that up front. This policy also outlines that if a conflict is disclosed, it has to be resolved before any research funding can be expended to the university. And so it further protects us and the integrity of the research that we do to make sure those faculty who are conducting research are doing it for legitimate reasons. Those are major changes to the policy.
I mean, I support the concept of this. We had a problem.
This has been a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I just, just
I don't know any problem.
to avoid future problems.
I know lots of problems other places.
Okay. This is based on your past experience? Yes.
I'm talking about stories you may have read. I know in my former state, the CFO and 3 or 4 people around me were just all let go within the last 12 to 15 months for something very similar to this. CFO sat on a board of a technology company, which he used undue influence to have that institution, Georgia Tech, signed major multi-million-dollar contracts with the vendor. They're doing some research pieces as part of that. And so this is common at larger universities, research-focused universities. This is just protecting us now. I don't know of any problem here, but Anne Marie's here. I'm sure she would know if there was one.
Nothing to discuss in this meeting on that.
Well said.
I was surprised by the exclusions more than anything else. Like that would be where the conflict would lie. Jody?
We're not prohibiting practice, we're just saying if it happens, it has to be resolved, the conflict has to be resolved before any grant is approved.
That's exactly right.
And who's going to determine the
That
conflict
is the
is?
end of, well, that portion of the last piece of the policy. It has to be reported, I know, to the Spark office.
Okay, so the same,
And then that group sorts through, it's in C under item, page. It's reported to the Spark office, and then it talks about being satisfactorily resolved through the Spark office before the award or contract can be submitted.
and it will be noted that it went through that process.
Correct.
And I'm going to come back to that maybe briefly. Why, I'm just curious why exclusions would be made for income on service or advisory committees. That seems like that would be a real place to have conflict, or income from lecturers or seminars or teaching engagements. Seems like those would be high conflict areas. Why were those excluded?
I do not have a very perfect answer for that.
It seemed like the 4 called out here, at least the last 3 are the most, particularly income from investments, mutual funds, retirement. It seems like there's, yeah, it seems like those could be conflicted. So I was just curious why they were pulled out.
I don't have a good answer there. Anyone have?
It's not pertinent.
I think it will probably be seeing some legislation on this.
It doesn't concern me. I'm just curious why. It seems like those are the 3 most places you'd have conflict.
I can get you a better answer, but I don't have.
Well, I don't have enough concern with it not to move forward, but it is curious.
They limit it to income or any equity stake in a company has to be disclosed.
Mm-hmm.
And income, I think it's $5,000 or less does not have to be disclosed. And that's very typical for faculty members. You may be paid to speak somewhere and maybe give them $1,500 for some travel. And then they may want to do some research for them after. That's a very common relationship. As soon as you're in ownership, in an ownership position, that's where you can largely influence your future financial situation in ways that may not be aligned to research.
Yeah, you're right. All right. Any additional questions that we have here? If not, well, Michael, do you have any questions? All right. Let us move forward then. It's been proposed that we move forward on action 6.71, disclosure of financial interest related to sponsorship of projects. Would someone please put forward a motion on that? Jody, and is there a second? Okay, and Beverly put forward the second, and let's proceed with the vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No opposed, so that action passed. And the final policy revision is 8.3.1 flexible work arrangements, and that is Mr. Marvin Dodge.
Yeah. Well, I'm appreciative of the fact that I wasn't king of policies today, so this is.
Yeah. I think you had 16 last go. So.
It was terrible. We'll make sure that doesn't happen again. This is actually a brand new policy for you to consider, and it's interesting the timing of COVID and the world shutting down and so forth. We actually began this conversation late last fall in talking about flexible work arrangements or work at home policy is really how it started out, and it has morphed quite a bit. We have had a lot of conversation on campus relative to this policy, and particularly from staff who it applies to. Because the faculty are managed and their flexible arrangements are handled through academic policy instead of staff policy. So as we look at the trend in businesses around us, more and more companies seem to be having success at allowing employees to work at home. And certainly we have found a similar thing as we've addressed COVID. Many of our employees who could work from home have been working from home since March or April, and are preparing, many of them preparing to come back as the school year begins again. So we wanted to have a policy that really defined the process an employee would go through. This I like to point out as a cautionary note, is a privilege, not a right. So not every employee on campus will be afforded the opportunity to have a flexible work arrangement or to work from home. Certainly as you think about all of the hundreds of folks that work in facilities, whether it's mowing the lawn or painting or repairing heating and air conditioning systems on campus, there isn't a whole lot they can do from home. So it is not, while the policy applies to all of our staff, there obviously are some that will not be able to take advantage of it. And we've built into here a lot of oversight in this process. So an employee who's interested in a flexible work arrangement, whether that's working at home or it may just be working odd hours. So they may say, it work better for me to work from 12 to 8 or from 6 to 2 or something like that. This policy will allow us to formalize those types of arrangements as well. But we want to make sure that it's approved by the supervisor, that it's practical for the office that they're in, and that a vice president is involved in signing off on these as well. So the appropriate line vice president needs to be involved. One, to make sure that there's adequate work that can go home. Two, that there's a safe environment to work. Three, we've been very concerned about the information technology components of that, data sharing, data information in the home. So while the policy itself is only 2 pages long, we have attached a 5-page or so document, which is the documentation that would need to be filled out, and this will be electronic ultimately, but that really stipulates the ifs, ands, and buts of these arrangements. That's not part of policy, but the HR office will have the flexibility with cabinet to adjust that form as necessary. But the intent is that an employee would make a request, they would sit down with their supervisor, they would complete the form, they would talk about what IT assets need to go to their home, what kind of work arrangement they'll have in the home. We do specify that we don't sign off on these so that you can babysit your 6 kids all day long. You still need to be productive. It is still doing the same job you have done for the university. We're just simply changing the location or changing the time of day that you're going to work on those. So there are a couple of things that the initial conversation that triggered much of this was talking about office space. And in a campus of our size with 950 or so full-time employees, we have over 900 offices. So there's a constant demand to build additional offices. And part of the conversation we got into is it'd be nice if we could save office space by allowing employees to work at home who can successfully work from home and remain productive and continue the work that's necessary. So part of it is we hope there'll be some freeing up of office space that could be utilized instead of always having to build space. Certainly health and welfare is a concern as we talk about COVID and all of the information that's swirling around us. To the extent that somebody has health conditions, has young children at home, maybe taking care of aging parents, or has some compromise to their health, this would afford an opportunity for them to remain at home, work at home successfully, and to try to keep themselves from coming in contact with COVID or any number of health conditions that could come. And the third thing that we actually are intrigued by and hope that we see some of is, as we become more global, and particularly as we put more resources into our online offerings, we have students that are doing much of that online work at night, weekends, you know, the many non-traditional students. And so we hope, as part of the flexible work arrangement, that we'll have some employees that will opt to work maybe a swing shift, who could be available by phone in the evening hours for those online students who may be calling in and looking for some help or assistance. So it would afford us some flexibility in that way as well. Anyway, I think that's a pretty good summary of it.
Marvin, you had mentioned verbally, but I didn't see the process in the proposal. So they have to get approval from their supervisor, and then the vice president has to sign off on it. I saw in section 4, F, it talks how the university maintains sole discretion to withhold their counsel, but has there been any thought given if it's just not working, how you pull that back and get them back working?
Yeah, so at a minimum, each of these arrangements will be reviewed annually so that we make sure. Plus, we've added to the document piece of that the work at home arrangement isn't necessarily tied to the job, the specific job. So if somebody leaves and somebody else is hired in, there should not be an automatic expectation they can work from home. But it really is specific to the individual involved. And part of our concern, as I think a lot of folks have to address, is that there are some folks who can work from home very successfully, continue to be very productive, if not more productive, working in the home environment. There are others who just frankly aren't successful working at home. So the supervisor and the vice president have the opportunity to pull that back at any given point. We added to it, as part of the comments that came in from staff, that if notice is provided, this isn't working out, you need to come back to the office, that we give them at least a week's notice so that they can make arrangements to return back to campus.
I've attempted this in no fewer than 10 of my companies, and it really has been a crapshoot. It's 50 great, 50 terrible.
Okay.
So my concern would be that someone sets the expectation that, oh, this is my new arrangement, and it's just not working. You can quickly retract on it, suggesting maybe quicker than a year might be appropriate.
Yeah, we have that ability, and this keys in on something I've harped on throughout my career. You have to set expectations, and so we've really tried to make that form detailed enough to specify the conditions of this arrangement. And assuming it all works, that's great. But if it doesn't, then we've at least outlined our expectations. Either a vice president or supervisor, they can sit down with the individual employee together and just say, you're not meeting our expectations in the following ways. And we try to be very clear with you when we started this, what our expectations are. So all of this is an effort to have documentation so that if things don't work out, we can address it.
I'm just so I'm understanding completely. So you could have colleagues that work in the same department, similar jobs, but one of them is allowed to work from home because it's individualized and they're capable of doing that, and the other one is told, no, it doesn't work for you, you have to meet you in the office.
Yep, that is, yes, conceivable.
I think I got a question, but let me just add, so the things that you were saying, Chris, there in terms of, this review rate and so forth, you said they have been added or they will be added?
No, we try to keep the policy very high level.
Because there's a policy within the document.
Yeah, but this document,
Part of the policy.
And that wasn't included in the.
oh, it's part of policy.
So, I guess I'm asking that question.
Yeah, but I didn't see it. I didn't
So
see that.
maybe a couple of those things that are in the document, just be part of the policy, still on a high level, but, so that, I think consistent. And I think you have to do this, greatly, and I think you did a great job in outlining. I think my approach is a difficult, tricky thing, it's not for everybody. You can see kind of the effects of what happens if, people start working at home, and you look at Michael's beard, that starts happening. And it has to be, it may be less than a year before you have to stop, right? So,
What I'm really disappointed else we don't even have Pebble Beach in the background.
yeah. But he had a question.
Michael, you had a question?
Yeah, sorry. Pebble Beach, they changed platforms on me. On Zoom, I got Pebble Beach in the background. On WebEx, I don't. I think Marvin covered it, but the two things that we've dealt with that I guess I would make sure that you're considering as a cabinet and as the different VPs who are making these approvals. One would be making sure that there's at least within department a consistent way of measuring productivity. And the other is we actually had each of our employees sign an agreement, saying that they acknowledge that they would be responsible to maintain productivity and certain standards and those kind of things. And so, one, I guess the question would be, have you talked about those things? And two, just a suggestion to maybe consider those.
Yeah, it has been a lot of the conversation, and I'm happy to go back and review the form. And I'm actually happy to add things to the policy. We want to make sure that our staff association is involved, and Tricia has helped immensely in shepherding this one through that process. I'd love to ask for approval of where we are today for this policy, because we were hoping to implement it as folks start coming back for students in school reopening. And I'm happy to go back, and if we need to add some more language in, we can come up with that language and present it to you at another meeting. The form, again, is not official policy, so that we can change and sway in any way we want through the process.
Yeah, that'd be good. The consistency issue is an important one. It's a challenge among vice presidents, because different departments have different feelings about that. So that's going to be something that a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, and I would actually, the consistency is part of it, but from my experience, one of those 10 companies, I lost one of the companies. One of my companies folded down, completely melted down because of the internal conflicts and the culture that was lost out of it. So that's actually my biggest concern of it, of quickly being able to retract it and get that consistency.
Yeah, and from those of you in business who've dealt with this, I'd love to understand what did work for consistent measures. Are there key indicators that you look for with individual employees or all of your employees that seem to either work or not across the board?
I don't know what else to comment. My comment would be it's the individual. It's not the policy as much as it's the individual. Some individuals have high capacity to do this and shine, and others just, well, they play video games all day.
Well, you can't have, it's hard to have everybody doing that. I mean, you also lose the culture of the companies communicating. I think the other thing is just trying to, a lot of it depends on the leader, quite frankly, and how he or she engages those that are remote with the rest of the team. So there's a lot of cultural elements here that have to be, it's a more difficult thing to manage, but necessary as you balance it. I mean, you have to deal with that in this environment because of everything that you've got going, but it's from a leadership standpoint, learning how to engage and keeping everybody engaged. It's much easier where they already have a relationship. We're doing it like now, remote a little bit. It's harder when you have new people where they don't have a relationship with your team.
Ironically, I've actually several of those 10, two that were working really well, begged to come back and said, please, we're tired of this. We want the personal exchange. And so what they were wanting, they actually ended up not wanting. And so I had other situations where it became a problem of just working too much and they couldn't separate their personal life from. So I think it is more tricky than just a policy. And I think you guys are in the midst of it now, and I'd be curious to know how it is working. I suspect it's the same thing. It's a mixed bag depending on the individual, is my bet.
Well, and one of the things that's interesting that has to be a part of the measure is the ability to contact that employee, because it's come loud and clear, not just from cabinet members, but from some of the leadership on the staff association, that one of the big frustrations is they'll call and call and call and never get an answer, not get a call back, not get any kind of response. I wish that was only for employees working at home. It seems to be universal, whether they're on campus or off campus, but it's one of those matters that has to be addressed.
Yes, Beverly.
Just information. About what percentage of the employees want to work remotely that has the ability to work remotely?
That's interesting. I'd look down the row at my colleagues. I know from my division, I don't have many people working from home, quite frankly. I bet there's a handful, maybe 10 at most, out of my entire division. But again, I have facilities that pretty much all have to be here. But even in accounting, internal audit, I mean, we have folks that may work at home on Fridays or occasionally say, I'm going to work at home the next couple of days. And this process doesn't really apply to those kind of occasional work at homes. This is a set designation, work at home. I don't know what.
I probably have a third that would like to. And there was probably 20% that were already, but recruiters in California and Vegas working out of their homes. But I wouldn't be surprised if we end up with about a third that can do it well. As the chair said, some don't know how to turn it off, so I'm getting the benefit of about 60, 70 hours of work out. They can't separate their jobs.
And that can be a problem too, because that ends up not being sustainable long term from burnout.
That's right.
And so it's
short-term benefit, long-term.
This has been one of those crazy things I started doing about 10, 11, 12 years ago. And it still perplexes me when it works and when it doesn't work. So I just would suggest just be careful and have quick ways to measure it's working or not.
I'm still waiting for the president to bring forward a policy that we only have to work 40 hours a week. I do 8 hours a day on campus and then 6 to 8 hours at home.
I just think that even if you deny a bulk of the requests, it's important to have some kind of policy in place because it may make sense for a small percentage of people. And to Vance's point, I think where it puts the most pressure on what we've learned in our company is supervision. The leaders, it's more pressure on them to manage people that aren't around every day. But I do think it's necessary to have something in place, again, even if you deny the bulk of the requests.
Thank you. I agree.
Yeah,
it's a touchy area, and
if I could make one more comment on that is the concept of returning to reporting. The cadence of accountability is just vitally important with remote function. It's very consistent.
Well, and it's interesting because one of the offices that IT, which I have responsibility for, we have a number of programmers that live in different areas of the country. In fact, our database administrators lived in Texas for 15 years or more and does a phenomenal job. So those are folks that have the tools, have access, and we know that they're working because they're actually producing software for us to use. I mean, that's kind of an easy one to work, but we do all kinds of things on campus. In some areas, it's going to be a lot harder to measure than others.
I just have one question. It appears in the document that remote is lightly defined, but I'm just wondering if you want to make sure that you have that more defined, because you don't want it to become an opportunity for someone to say, well, I work remotely, but I'm moving to Texas or I'm doing this or whatever. And there may be a scenario in which that doesn't work. Programmers or whatever, or online professors, but you may want to make sure that there's some type of a better defined situation as to who you're expecting to be, you know, in the remote, in the vicinity, the local vicinity.
Physical services probably isn't going to work great for remote work.
But the way we define flexible work hours is we only require half a day. You don't care what 12 hours it is.
Must be where the president gets this.
But, and then lastly, I think that there should be an expectation that if a phone call is placed by your supervisor, that it's answered within a certain period of time. You know?
That was in our contracts. We had 20 minutes to get back when we were working remotely. Or you can just send a text that says, I will get back to you at this time.
Yeah. I mean, that's crazy.
I'd suggest that we move forward with this, trustees, but maybe put the asterisks on it, Marvin, if we could just have just maybe a little more clarity and just a little more button up. And maybe this 4-page, the form. Yeah, the form, maybe we just look at that or add that. How does everybody feel about that? Does that sound like a good plan? It sounds like there is just a little bit of concern on this one. All right, with that being said, let's move forward with policy 8.3.1, flexible arrangements with an asterisk that will get a little bit more tightening of the lug nuts up on that next trustee meeting. Could someone put forward the motion? All right, Mindy, if you would move that, and do I have a second? Vance puts forward the second. Any additional discussion? If not, we'll proceed with the vote. All in favor with that exception? Any who are opposed? All right, we've moved that forward, that action forward with the expectation next time we'll just add a little more clarifying language. All right, now we get to move forward to the fun one. We've got our 401 today, a new program in AS in education. And I believe Provost Anderson, you're leading that with James Sage. And we also acknowledge that we got Dr. Pellegrini and Dr. Wengsgaard from the College of Education with us.
Yes, College of Education here. Thank you for being here with us. They've done a fabulous job putting a very good program together. So this is a new program. It's an Associate of Science in Education. It's one of the programs that is part of a larger effort to create stackable credentials. We're working hard to make sure when a student comes here, even if they leave before they finish a bachelor's degree, they leave here with something. And there's a large market for students and potential students who would like to complete an Associate of Science degree in education. Many of them are working as teaching assistants or working somewhere in the classroom but have not had a formal education to move on to be a teacher themselves. So this is our stackable credential. It's associate's degree. There aren't any new classes. This just allows a student to get a credential after 60 hours before waiting until they get 120 hours to finish their Bachelor of Science education. So glad to answer any questions. I'm sure my colleagues will be here to answer any questions you've got as well.
I'd love to just hear briefly, if we could, maybe from our doctors, and maybe share just a little bit about what the acquisition program and why they see it necessary.
Sure. One thing, if a student has been here a year or two and they decide to have a family or move or do something different, not being able to come back, yes, and they have a small goal, so a short-term goal, and then a BS later. So we just thought it'll be a great way for them to house their credits, and they won't have the risk of losing them, and they can go off and do a different adventure and then come back to us to finish. We've also created an online, we're working on creating an online BS, so these 60 hours can be taken at a distance. And we've had people call us from Enterprise. Can we take these courses and these courses because we're interested in becoming a teacher in the future? So this will, obviously accommodate people at a distance. And so like Provost Anderson said, it creates more options, more stackable options, and distance options, so housing and those kind of things.
How many are you projecting to go through the program in a year?
That's a good question. We're thinking word of mouth. How do we market this? That'll be the next step. And we probably have students here right now that could potentially add this to their degree works. I'm assuming it used to be that university work in the past, it was a requirement before they applied to the College of Education that they finish their AS and have that on the record. I don't know much about that, but that would look really good to have that as a degree for them.
This really goes back to 1992 when I was principal at Flanding Elementary. I reached out to Jerry Bowler, then the department chair, and said, we have Title I special ed aides here, full-time aides, that do not have their degrees. We would like them to have them move towards their degrees. And he said, Tony, we have no opportunity to get over, they can't take their families and bring them to Cedar City. And so what we had to do was hire a young teacher from BYU or University of Georgia, come down, stay for a year or two, get married and leave. And we'd be in the same situation again. But the opportunity to move these students through an online program, the market is large out there. It's across all the 700 elementary and secondary schools in Utah and out of Utah as well. And our marketing efforts will start with the Elementary and Secondary Principals Association, taking this opportunity to share. We go to their state conferences in St. George, and each February we're going to market this and sell it to them and say, bring this back to those aides in your buildings that would like to prepared.
So a high percentage of this university will be online, they actually won't be attending, a lot of this will be online education.
I think in the long term, yes.
We'll be the only associate for science education state that will be attainable online.
Oh, wonderful.
There's Weber State, Utah Valley, Salt Lake Community have similar programs, but ours will be the only ones that will online.
Provost.
I'm ready to say yes.
Any additional questions or comments? I suspect our educators here. All right, well, let's move forward then. It's proposed that we move forward on new program R401 in ASN education. Would someone please put forward a motion? Vance, and do I have a second? Beverly, a second, and all in favor? Aye. And any opposed? All right, this 401 passed unanimously. Congratulations. We're excited to see the fruits of this. Thank you so much for coming today. All right, we have a bunch of consent items, and we can do these all at one time. So various curriculum changes. Oh, I do. I missed that one. We've got aztec articulation agreements and annual updates, and that's also from Provost Henderson.
Sure. I'll just briefly review these. I had a good meeting with Dr. Bill Pierce, Vice President for Instruction at Southwest Tech, a couple days ago. And we spent an hour talking through the different programs in this agreement. It's really a transformational agreement for students. It is reviewed annually. They have very strict guidelines regarding which programs they can keep, which ones they have to terminate, largely dependent on the number that are enrolled and the placement within the industry relative to certificate of getting. So this year, they had to cut back on a few of the certificates they offered. So we removed those out of the agreement. We also made a few changes to some wording as they changed their coursework and we changed our coursework. Really nothing substantive in that area, but this is our most recent updates to the agreements we have with Southwest Tech. We have to answer any questions you've got about those agreements. It's fairly standard.
No questions? I guess my question is not related to this exactly, but just curious of how the relationship is proceeding overall. Or things, how many students are enrolled and partaking of it, and just in general, how is it going?
We need to prepare for you a summary report at some point that will show those numbers. I don't have those right now, but I certainly can get them. I'll tell you, the leadership teams work very well together. Working on some other kinks with nursing programs and how students transfer back and forth. They receive almost their full nursing program from us. These are students who are prepared to become nurses, but we don't have slots for them. They go to them, if they're LPN, that's about 16 a year. And then come back to us to finish their RN and BSN. And so we've got great working relationships. We should prepare for you in the future meeting, program by program, how many students who come back and forth with that.
Okay, that'd be great, but I think even just a general feel, is it for the most part going pretty well, President? And you feel that good relationships, and I know there was a lot of years that had to be aligned here.
Yeah.
Are they, for the most part, working well?
Working very well.
Okay.
Yeah, this is one of our better programs. Super proud of how it's going.
I think actually this will be the blueprint for the state now that they've got the higher education board combined. Actually, this is maybe the model for them to use. So, all right. No questions on that? Then let's move forward with the approval of the aztec articulation agreements, the annual update. Could someone please put forward a motion? Jody, a second, please. Newman, and all in favor of approving this? Aye. Any opposed? All right, that also passed unanimously. All right, let's just do the consent items here quickly. There were 1, 2, 3 personnel early retirements, tenure and rank advancement, investment reports, and endowment reports. Is there any discussion or any concerns from any of the consent items? Oh, I think that where his voice at? We got to have him sing some opera or something. Let's keep going. All right, if someone would put forward a motion, please, to approve the consent items. And Newman, can I have a second? Jody, a second. All in favor of approving? Any opposed? Okay, the consent items also passed unanimously. So now we get to move to the fun part of the meeting, our board reports. Let's go first with Jody on aviation and USF. And then we'll have Mindy K with alumni and Michael with athletics.
I'll be brief. I was really worried about the aviation department, you know, as it relates to how the country is dealing with travel at this point. And I thought that that would be reflected in the program, but in talking to Mike, it has not been the case. I thought there may be some hesitation to move into that type of a field in this environment, and that's certainly not the case. They have, for the fall, they have a total of 562 students, which is extremely impressive. So 205 of those are the rotary and 140-ish for the fixed wing. So the only negative impact I've seen is the maintenance program, and recruitment's been down just because they haven't had any ability to go recruit. So otherwise, everything else is up and moving forward, and everybody is still flying, and they're still having classes all in person, obviously, and things are flourishing there. Because of another downturn in the economy with the coronavirus, a lot of the other institutions that have been creating these programs have stopped. So we've become the only game in town now. So it's even more of a benefit to us. So yeah, I was worried that it would be in a different situation, and it's actually quite opposite. So I'm grateful for that. I'm moving forward with Chuck Aaron and his academy. There's lots of interest from folks and pilots around the country to come and take that specialty certification. And then they also have revamped their protocols of how they clean the airplanes, how they're making sure that everybody is, disinfecting. And so at the end of each flight, they're in charge of cleaning so that it's clean for the next crew and again. So those are just a few things that were interesting to me, is how they were managing these difficult times. So I'm very proud of them. My other one, I think, do I have all of them today? Yeah, the festival, the Shakespeare Festival. Obviously, we were all a little bit disappointed that we couldn't have the season this year, but they are gearing up for next season, hiring actors, getting the directors in play, moving along. So it's been a good time for them to kind of reassess how many plays that they're doing and the time frame and everything. So is there anything I'm missing there?
Yeah, can I add something to
Yes.
that? So, this is the Utah Shakespeare Festival's best fundraising year ever.
Wow, really? It's amazing.
What that shows is that our donors are not transactional donors. They believe in the festival and want it to be successful. They're not giving because they're getting a free play. And
Is that a tribute to Fred as well?
I think it's a tribute. The fact that it's the best every year, I think it means that there is tremendous support for our current administration, the direction that they're going in, and what they've been doing. So I think it's just a super positive sign. They're not being turned down by anybody. People that were sponsoring a show, even though the show's canceled, they just said, keep the money.
Yeah, roll it into next year.
It's been really terrific.
So we thought we were going to lose quite a bit of money there, which we probably, how did the financials sort out?
So there's, we're in the middle of that, of course, because we're right in the middle of the season. It looks like we will be in a much better financial situation than we thought.
That's great.
And next year is the 60th anniversary year. And we've got some great plays coming out, and it'll be an exciting year.
Anticipate those are still potentially COVID that environment. We anticipate having rep without perimeters again with the union.
I've learned to never say with certainty what, of course, but I think it's extremely unlikely that the Actors Guild is going to carry over this prohibition till next summer.
Although some of the venues have already canceled for next year, or at least the early ones.
Some of the organizations have.
So, and we're one of the few that have said, no, we're moving forward, so.
The Guild is having its own financial challenges because it's supported by the members, and if the members aren't working, then that creates a significant challenge for them. So our opinion is that the Actors Guild doesn't have legal authority to deny these actors signing contracts. It's not within their authority. We filed a lawsuit, and the lawsuit would not be resolved before COVID was resolved. So, plus, we destroy our relationship with them. But we're quite confident about next summer, and I think it's going to be terrific. I just wanted to add that, Jody, that the fact that it's the best fundraising year ever is a great sign that people are supporting the festival. And they've been doing a lot of online seminars and such that it was never done before. So we're probably going to come out of this season where so many theaters in the country are coming out of this season either totally wiped out or years to recover. Ours is going to come out of this season ahead with no years to recover, just doing great. And part of the reason, of course, is that they have a maker. That's us. So a lot of these theaters don't have an organization that is guaranteeing them.
That's wonderful news. Really good news.
And I will say that when I'm on the calls, that they are very grateful for the school. They're especially grateful for the relationship with you, President, and for just having that opportunity to say, okay, we can, and if we fail, we're gonna be okay. So grateful for that, and just the relationship is very, very strong, and they are always very complimentary of the school. So.
Yeah, well, I couldn't be more proud of them. This is really true.
What percentage of the revenue comes from ticket sales versus just donation?
Right. Oh, I should know that.
73.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, I would think about something. That's what I was wondering, when you say the best year ever, you're talking about that 30%
Fundraising.
That's 35%. Anyways, continues to be strong in fundraising, but 70% of the revenue is gone. It's different ways.
Yeah.
But your cost basis obviously went way down.
Yeah.
So it
Just
just,
the cost, because we didn't hire any actors.
yeah, and hindsight's always 20/20, but it's actually probably a blessing that we didn't put on the festival in that environment.
Yeah, and we had some plays we were planning to do this summer that we're not doing, but we've already paid for the design work, and so we're just moving it to next year. So there's,
A lot of sunk costs.
And a lot of folks who bought tickets just said, roll longer. Like, you don't need to refund me, we'll just go next year.
So that's all. Thanks.
Jody, anything else you wanted to report?
I think I'm good.
All right, Indeed. Hey, you're up.
Okay.
Hey, Rich, I apologize. I wondered, you could circle back to this, but I wondered if you wanted to report on the line of credit that's tied to aviation, because we have purchased some things, but if you just want to circle back, I'm happy to talk about it.
We can finish that now.
Yeah.
I was gonna mention that, thanks. So we had approved that we would get a new aircraft, and then things kind of went south, and we decided not to. But then after looking at the viability of the program and the students we could bring in, if we had a new aircraft, or if we didn't have the aircraft, what revenue we'd be losing because those students would be coming, the decision was made to purchase the aircraft on the line of credit so that we could bring these numbers up for students.
Just for the record, we cannot go south. There's there's another university south that we don't go to. Thank you for the code.
Hey, Mark, was that it?
So, yeah, so you authorized the $5 million line of credit. We went out to bid with financial institutions. I was absolutely thrilled that State Bank of Southern Utah gave us the best rate and the best deal. And it has been phenomenal working with a hometown partner that has been very quick, very responsive, and we've had money in a matter of hours, frankly, to buy some of these aircraft. So there are a number of things on the menu that we were going to purchase with that line of credit. The aircraft that Jody's talked about is the Bell 505, which is the new technology Bell turbine engine aircraft that we need for mountain rescue and pulling weights and water buckets and so forth. That was ready for us in May. We negotiated back and forth on our deal. We had paid a down payment. They were not anxious to let us out of the purchase, but they were willing to sign a delay, a 6-month delay in picking it up, basically, which we signed, and that was interest-free, et cetera, no storage costs or anything else. We did pick that up 2 weeks ago because we've needed it for this fall semester with the number of students that have come in and the number of students who stayed in our program. We've not had nearly the loss, lower retention that we've had in some previous years when they leave us. We've also ordered another Robinson R44, and we've purchased 2 used ones that had low hours on them and were in great condition. And we're just negotiating through the purchase of the 4th Robinson aircraft. We needed 4 additional Robinsons for primary training. And this one is in North Carolina, and we're working with the owner. It comes, assuming we can pull the deal together, it comes with autopilot. None of our aircraft have autopilot on the rotor wing side, and so this affords us a new opportunity to do some training with autopilot on the rotor wing side of that. Chuck Aaron's special helicopter that we've talked so much about that does aerobatics and all of that we're going to use for corporate training was picked up 2 weeks ago as well, so it is out of the hangar. I was out there the other day. They are working through fine-tuning so that it would run better at a 5,000-foot elevation instead of sea level where it's lived for most of its life. So, but it still flies, and I guess they put on a show over I-15 at some point because they did some barrel rolls and so forth. So that piece is here, and we actually had a surprise call. We were going to purchase a hangar because we need some more hangar space for these additional aircraft. The one hangar that was available that we knew of at the airport had been for sale for several years at $500,000, and we've expressed interest off and on. When I finally called to say, I think we're ready to buy your hangar, all of a sudden it was $850,000. And I said, well, apparently not. So we ended our discussions with that hangar, but we were called by a fellow that owned a smaller hangar that's just a couple down from our row of hangars on Aviation Way or whatever. I think it is Aviation Way is the street. So we had an appraiser out there the other day once the appraisal comes back. That hangar is empty, and he's anxious to sell it to us, so I think we'll end up with a hangar as well, half the price that we anticipated. That will give us the capacity to hangar all of these additional aircraft. So it's worked out quite well, and we appreciate your support.
It's going to be really interesting what happens now with the program and the growth. I mean, we saw insane growth projections in this industry, and I don't think that will be a new reality, so it'll be interesting.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting. So we did finally receive CBIS approval. Anytime we offer a program to international students, we have to have authorization from the Department of Homeland Security. For each of those programs, we were seeking approval for both the fixed and rotor wing programs, and we have received that. Received it at the beginning of the year. So one of the things that I started talking with Stephen about is there are a number of recruiters in international areas that are anxious to send students to our aviation program. And while we're turning students away at this point because we're booked on both sides, we're kind of holding on to that thought because we still think if at some point we see a decline in enrollments from American students, that we can probably fill those seats with international students. And we'll have the ability to do that.
Probably not a great time to have a partnership with the airport in China. All right, Mindy, after 2 false starts, we're going to get it right on the track.
You sure, Marvin?
I apologize, Mindy. I apologize.
In terms of the National Alumni Council, in June, we had 5 members rotate off. And Mindy and Ron Harding have done a fantastic job finding us 6 new members to come on that are really going to represent the alumni of the university well, so I'm really excited about that. Another thing that is really exciting is that we are going to have a student alumni association this year made up of current students who will work on alumni initiatives with us and work with current students as well to try to solidify that relationship. So as they graduate, we can continue that engagement with the university, and the president of that, Brock Lee, is going to serve with us as ex officio on our council, so we have that current student voice and try to integrate some of that, so we're excited about that. The big thing that we have going this fall is we have a Don't Wing It, Go Vote initiative, so we'll be encouraging all alumni to get out and exercise their right to vote this year with some social media pushes and different things like that, so we're excited about that. The biggest thing for this fall is that we are going to be able to launch our Tradition Keeper, which we worked with several different entities on campus to develop 50 traditions that are unique to Southern Utah University and Cedar City. And the students this year will have the opportunity to start working on them. The goal is that over their time at SUU, they complete these 50 traditions, and then they can get prizes along the way and things like that. But then also, if they do complete all 50, there's a stole that they can purchase for graduation to say they were official tradition keeper. And the great thing about this is that in the spring, we'll be able to launch the same concept with the alumni with some modifications so they can participate as well. And there's also a couple of things on there that prospective student athletes could participate in on like a campus tour. So we're hitting all 3 demographics with it to try to help with that engagement and just like really sell how special SUU is and how many great things are unique to the community. So we're excited about that. One thing that I want to give Mindy and her staff a lot of credit for is that, and we had this little discussion at lunch, is that alumni tends to be a very event-oriented, and they have done a fantastic job thinking outside the box and bringing in virtual events. And they're being really proactive in the future. And if we can't have these large gatherings and things, how do we still stay engaged? So I give them a lot of credit for thinking ahead. But those are just kind of the things that we're working on right now and trying to stay active during the pandemic. And I can answer any questions, or Mindy, if I missed anything.
You did well. Thanks.
Thank you, Mindy. Yeah, that was really good information.
Kudos to you guys, you're doing a lot of great things.
Really are. Love the
They're
tradition.
fun.
Of the tradition. I wonder if old Stroll, White Stroll is going to be on that tradition.
There's a printed paper and a spoken tradition.
And we'll make sure you all have access to the app so that you can participate as well.
Thank you, Mindy. All right, Michael, I think you're up with athletics.
Great. Well, I appreciate Debbie and her engagement while she's been laid up, and hope that she continues to recover well. She's got a great team, and they've continued to work really well through this pandemic. Obviously, athletics and everything else related to the different sports that we engage in have been affected by the pandemic as well. A couple of highlights that Debbie sent to us that I think are worth noting. Athletics finished in the black for the fiscal year 2020. They had a little bit of a surplus, paid off some debt, and still had a surplus remaining going into the next year. Obviously, their budget will be dependent on whether the sports are able to continue, and they'll be able to collect revenue during this coming year. The communications, marketing, and graphic design team for athletics have gone through and created a new logo and a new tagline, hashtag Storm the Sky. I'm not sure if any of you have seen that. I've certainly noticed it in the emails that I've gotten, which is, I think it's great. Debbie believes that that's been received well by all of the different constituents that see that. The Big Sky President's Council has voted, they've had a vote that resulted in a more permissive decision by individual institutions regarding sports sponsorship. What that means for us is it allowed us to discontinue the tennis programs. And so that decision was made a little bit earlier. Debbie does note here that they're continuing to work through the Title IX issues that come with that and making sure that scholarship equality continues to be maintained going forward. And then the last thing she mentions here is they've done their best to manage staffing through the pandemic and managing a smaller budget. And so they've made some reductions where necessary to continue to make sure that their budget is achievable. The one thing that isn't mentioned here, and I did have a follow-up email with Debbie, and maybe I'd ask the president to comment on this. I know there have been discussions in a lot of different conferences regarding football being the largest revenue source for the athletics department. So I'm not exactly sure where the Big Sky is, and given the recent canceling of their season by UConn, I'm just curious what discussions have been had among the institutions, and maybe President could speak about that for a little bit.
Got to get my mask to not pull my glasses off. Yeah, so the Big Sky Conference voted to move the football season to spring. The conference season to spring. And it wasn't a unanimous vote, but it was a majority vote. And the next question is, because the conference season is 8 games, but we play 11, and the schools have broad discretion in scheduling non-conference games for those other 3. So the question is, do the institutions have the right to choose whether to play in-state conference games in the fall, up to 3? And
No more than 3.
3 would be the max, because we can't play more than 11, and the 8 is the conference. So we think we might have an answer on some of that Monday. It's a legal question. It's interesting to be in a conference where you've got 3 California schools, 1 Oregon, and 1 Washington. They see the world differently than Arizona and Utah.
Montana.
So we're in a conference that's, there's a lot of influence from that West Coast. And anyway,
the legal answer is yes. Are we predisposed to do that? The answer is I hope so, because I was hoping I'd hear that today. But just because I think people are hungry for it. You just want to understand.
There's also the revenue factor, President, that may be worth commenting on.
Yeah, well, remember, athletics is an expenditure. There is no revenue in athletics. If you take the whole budget, it costs us money for every single sport. We have no sport that we make money. Anyway, so if we're allowed to play 2 or 3 games in the fall that are non-conference, and assuming everything else works well for us, I think that you would see us play those games, unless you told us you didn't want us to. But
because those 3 games you do get compensation for playing.
That's no, we're not getting any money to play this.
You wait.
We're presently scheduled to play Dixie and Utah State. And Utah State is a guarantee game, so we get some revenue from that. We would get no revenue from Dixie. We would try to negotiate an additional in-state game. We don't have anybody else.
Are those games out? Are they here or are they at Utah State?
Dixie's here, Utah State's involved. If they played here, there wouldn't be a guarantee. Because they're sharing their ticket revenue from their fans. We're playing.
So, I mean, there's movements throughout the country in different conferences. The student athletes starting to comment in social media. What kind of a response have we received, heard from our athletes as far as their desire to play and their thoughts on the safety of playing?
I think that our students would like to play a few in-state scrimmages this fall. And I think that they're very uncertain about whether they want to play in the spring. So we'll see what happens. Our priority has to be the safety and welfare of our students. And then our second priority has to be next year, right? Because this year is going to be goofy under any circumstance. So our preference would be to play a few in-state scrimmages where we can bus, avoid airlines, monitor well, work with our neighboring schools, have safe games. That would probably be our preference, and to not do spring, but we don't win all of these votes.
Well, and also there's some NCAA legislation that's being tossed about that students could opt out without their scholarship being impacted. Like individually, if the team decides to proceed, but individually their student athletes that feel like they're at high risk or they're just not comfortable, they can opt out and not be financially implicated.
The other problem is that if yes, absolutely, and we have athletes that are saying we would like to opt out, and we're providing no pressure. If anybody wants to opt out, they just opt out. They've got their scholarship. They save a year of eligibility. The other trouble we have about a spring schedule is that playing in the spring makes it, in our opinion, makes it difficult to get the students to recover and then be prepared for a really great fall the following year. That doesn't seem to be a worry at all for some of the other schools. And that might be the schools that do actually make money.
Do we have any challenges with facilities in the spring for multiple sports? Utilizing the same facilities?
No, we can work through all of that. Nobody else is using the football stadium. And the other sports we can work out. Softball has its own place.
And track isn't using it?
Well, track is track. They're spring and fall. So it's the same students.
What's been Debbie's recommendation? Yeah. Debbie, do you want to weigh in on this one?
Debbie,
everybody. Hopefully you can hear me now. I do want to say before I make any comments that the meetings with the Big Sky presidents and athletic directors have been very lively, I should say. And, you know, one of the things that has been a real blessing for me to see is that our president, in a meeting and a discussion with, you know, the presidents from the other Big Sky schools, he's represented us so well, and he's so logical and really has the student athletes' health and well-being at his utmost level of importance. So I was so proud of being connected with him on the call yesterday. So I want to say that's been our #1 priority. But we will have probably some staffing challenges in the spring with handling you know, softball and and football together, but we're not too worried about that. We might be having softball in the morning and football in the in the afternoon or evening. And it's really beneficial. I mean, what's helpful to us is that we've eliminated recently the 2 spring sports that that could have really interfered because they go so long, and that's the men's and women's tennis programs. But we will work through all these challenges, and our staff is ready to go, and they know that this is what we're going to have to do in the spring, and so we will get it done.
Thank you, Debbie.
The Big Sky is considering a full spring schedule, not like a reduced football schedule. They still try to play 8 in the spring.
8 games, which quite honestly, I'm opposed to. I think that's too many games to play in the spring, but I kept losing every, I was always on the losing side of every vote. So my number one concern, as the president said, is I believe that playing 8 games in the spring and then having only a couple of months off and having the football team show back up and play a full schedule in the fall. My number one concern is just injuries next fall. I'm very concerned about that because I totally believe in rest and for these athletes, and I don't think they're going to get enough rest. But we, as President said, we were outvoted, and so we're part of the Big Sky family, and we will go with the majority and try to take the best care of our athletes as we can. I do want to say that that our goal this fall is to have all of our athletes come through the fall semester feeling like they've had a really wonderful experience at SUU. So we are working on a very vital program where we can have this opportunity. To me, it's a little bit of a blessing that we have an opportunity to have them here on campus where we can do some life skills types programs, some a little bit more in-depth financial training for them, some health and wellness education for them, just some life skills type programs. So we are not going to sit around this fall and twiddle our thumbs and wait to spring. It's a semester that we have these student athletes on campus, and we're going to try to make something really, really special out of it. So we'll share that program with you as we finish getting it developed.
Thank you, Debbie.
Mm-hmm.
We've been working very closely together, Debbie and I, and also Mario, and then with all the other sports as well. But there's only so much I can say in a public meeting about debates that occur in what's supposed to be kind of a private setting. But we're open to anything that you want to tell us as we continue to work through all of this. Next week, we'll probably learn, early next week, we'll learn whether we can play any in-state games. If you have an opinion that we should or shouldn't do that, if you have an opinion about whether we should be playing in the fall or not, whether we should, if East is delayed in the spring, whether you think we should play in the spring or not. If you have any opinions about that, we're open to those discussions after the meeting, whatever you like.
Thank you, President. And I think it's also, Debbie, looks like your big picture is bounced off, but I think it's really appropriate as trustees that we acknowledge Mike's first point, that the athletic department operated in the black for the first time
in the history of the world.
Well, since I've been involved in the university, we jumped over that pretty quickly, but if we could give a round of applause, I think that would be what it was over. So thank you. Thank you, Debbie. And we also just want to wish you well and acknowledge you at this time, and thank you for all that you do, and please be well and get well.
Thank you, and thanks for all the prayers and positive thoughts. They were very, very special to me.
Debbie's from home because I told her to stay home. We care about it too much.
Yes.
And Debbie has created a very strong team. Very proud of the team that she's created and the coaches. This is a high point for us in our athletics history, at least as long as I've been here. It feels to me like this is our, this really a nice one.
Thank
So
you.
you had one question, and then I would propose to take a 10-minute bio break before we do President's final report.
My 3-hour report.
Absolutely, we'll look forward to it. We bought face masks and eye blinds.
So my question was this, is the decision that was made to play the 8 games, is that final?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, as final as things can be in these circumstances, but is there a period of comment time? Is there a period of, is there any?
No, it's.
I'm just wondering what the process was.
It's final decision, and it always could be revisited, but unlikely.
Was there any, I'm sure that every scenario was looked at and thought of. It seems to me that 4 and 4 would have been a little bit more.
The commentary that Debbie made about lively.
Spirited.
There's a lot of strong opinions. This is not a bunch of wilting violets getting together. But yeah, they've explored a million options. The process that we have, and Mindy Kay can answer for this too, the process is more involved than a policy on a campus. Because this goes through a whole series of groups, and then it goes to the athletic directors, and then it comes to the presidents. It is a very significant process that's vetted through every level. And by the time it gets to the last vote, there are no eyes in terms of the athletic world that haven't been on. And the problem with 4 and 4 is that California can't play this well no matter what. And Portland is not going to play no matter what.
Because of local policies.
Because of local rules and because they're in hotspots. And Eastern Washington is going to play no matter what. And Montana is not going to play regardless this fall. So most of the schools have already said we're not going to play under any circumstance. So it's easy for them to just vote that no one's going to play. And then they're hoping that they can have a really great spring, but we're concerned that spring, even though we put the season on until spring, that spring might find us in a challenge too.
Along those lines, President, because one of the issues that our schools are having difficulty with are the NCAA resocialization plans and the required testing. Do you have a relationship here? Are you going to be able to, do the weekly tests or whatever is ended up being required?
Go ahead.
We do, Mindy Kay. We have several options. We're actually in negotiations right now with Cedar City Hospital, IHC, and we're just working on the financial end of that. But we also have we've been told by St. George that they can meet those requirements. But we also have a third option that we're working on. We're trying to find the cheapest option. And there is a professor on campus that might be able to help us with getting the testing. And we talked to a lab this morning that would be able to conduct that would be able to get the results of those tests for us. So we're going to be able to meet that. It's very challenging financially, as you know, but it is capable. We do have the capability of doing it.
Some of the California schools are reporting that, so in order to compete in the fall, the NCAA has rules on testing. And some of the California schools are telling us.
When you say testing, you're meaning COVID testing?
COVID-19.
COVID specific. So this is not an academic test?
No. We always have those, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the NCAA is going to require us to test all of our athletes prior to every single competition. The NCAA. So we will have to do COVID-19 tests.
Before every single competition?
Every week.
So if you have 2 games a week, you have to be tested twice a week? Or does it last for the 14 days?
Like for a volleyball team that's playing twice a week, you only have to be tested once a week, but now they're talking about if you're going on the road to multiple places, you may require additional tests. But for a football team, they're only playing once a week, so it would be a weekly test.
You may lose half your athletes with that mascara brush being stuffed up their nose
Well,
alone.
Dr. Hanline, the NCAA chief medical officer, he said yesterday that the NCAA is looking at allowing point of care or that rapid response. The issue with that is the accuracy hasn't been as great as the brain pit where they go up and get some out of there. But if they go point of care, those tests they're less expensive, but again, the concern is accuracy.
Yeah, that's right. So we have California schools that are telling us that they don't have access to tests. They can't do them regardless. We can do them, but they can't. So we're in a club where some of the schools absolutely can, some of them can, some of them don't want to, some of them do. Some of them feel like this is a moral issue. Some of us feel like there's a lot of issues.
Sounds like a university.
Yeah. We've been surveying our students. We've been talking to our coaches, trying to accommodate what their preferences as well. And we're all pretty aligned. But some of the frustrating pieces is that we've made a decision to not play football, but we haven't made a decision to not play soccer. So what's with this?
Money.
It just feels like, anyway, I'll just stop there. I don't think I need to say anymore.
We did maybe a real practical thing. I mean, I may have played in the spring here. There's much, snow on the ground. I mean, it's
Going to go
That
to
was going to be my proposal.
the end of February?
Yeah, I mean, there's.
If I one of those warm California schools to play February 17th.
Yeah.
You've got no problem solved.
You don't need masks if you're wearing a gorilla balaclava and wearing tennis or snowshoes. It's fun. It's fun.
The coaches entertaining the idea that the state game, so this, if we're possible, maybe in the fall, or is that just really upset the apple cart for no reason? I mean, if we get a good income out of it, long term, it doesn't sound like there's going to be a lot of that.
I think the answer is they would love to play the in-state.
Yes.
Get recover from a physical standpoint.
Yeah, if you have in-state games and you can bust to them and you can control things well and you're not getting on an airplane to come back and one player's got sick and so then you can't put him on an airplane. I mean, in-state is easy.
I should also say that Coach Warren has decided that with our in-state games, he will bus the day of the game. He doesn't want to put the athletes in a hotel. So it'll be a different look for us. But we're going to try to be as safe as we can be.
And we're trying to be consistent with all of our programs.
Well, I propose let's take a 10-minute bio break. What time are we at right now? We're at 3:45? Okay, so let's be back just a few minutes before 4, and then we'll conclude with the President's report, and then we'll put a wrap on this meeting.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you about, with commencement, is Heather logged on?
brought a clock down this morning.
Today, we're now to the point of, kind of, I think, the most important, one of the funnest parts of getting clarity from President Wyatt and just an update in general. Just a reminder to everyone that, that we, in addition to my this is streaming live, and so it's a general development public meeting and program. So, and President, I think you'll probably comment a little bit on it, but I do want to acknowledge and express appreciation for President for how he's handled a number of sensitive situations. It's always extremely difficult. I think all of us have been in a situation when we've been personally attacked or even attacked publicly. And we did have one of those situations recently with President Wyatt. And our primary focus, and I think the Board of Trustees, our focus always has to be on, number one, the well-being of the students and getting the students the very best education we can. Number two is safety and overall viability of the university. And several of the things we're looking at, President handled really delicately, really well, and we thank you for handling some of those situations so well, President. We acknowledge and realize that maybe been a little bit hard, but you handled that really well. So let's turn a little bit of time to President, and we can query him on anything that we want to know, but this is our final portion of the meeting.
So I'm going to be brief and then allow questions. Before I do, I want to make sure that we don't forget. Mindy, commencement.
Commencement tomorrow. Bailey and I have worked on platform seating. You will have your robes tomorrow and a continental breakfast, 8:30 to 9:30 in the Charles Hunter room. There will be air conditioning enough for an hour. So come enjoy some continental breakfast. You will get your robe, you will get your SUU mask at that point in time, and then we will walk you out to the processional where you will lead the processional. Totally different lineup than it normally has been, different processional. We won't lead you astray, you'll be just fine.
How are they doing the bell tower there? What are they doing? Are they walking through the bell tower?
Students are walking through the bell tower. That's the thing we heard most, is that they want to walk through the bell tower and they don't want to walk the wrong direction. So the processional will come out of the bell tower the right way and then take a quick left turn and up and around into the quad.
What time? Because I'm a mom too. What time? So is that part of the 10 o'clock graduation?
The graduates need to be here at about 9. We will line everybody up and start moving the processional at 9:30. About 9:40, 9:45, depending on how many graduates and faculty we have, we'll start moving the processional so that we're in place by 10 o'clock to start commencement. The program will be fairly quick. The president is featured in that and heading that program. It'll be fairly quick, about 30 minutes. You will all be excused at that point to leave the stage, so you don't have to bake. Sorry, President, you do. Sorry, Provost, you do too. But you'll be allowed to leave, and you can either go watch the live stream or we'll have VIP seating that you can take down in the audience. And then all the degrees will be awarded, then Mindy Kay will speak, the president will do final remarks, and we'll be done. We expect it to be about 2 hours. We have 600 graduates, and when we anticipated 250 to 300, we maybe wouldn't have done one ceremony and presenting all the degrees had we known that there would be 600, but we're excited that they're coming back. Please dress comfortably. You will be sitting in the sun. We know that. You will be looking into the sun, but it was easier to put us in the sun for 30 minutes than all the graduates and guests staring directly into the sun. So wear sunglasses, hats, whatever is appropriate on this day. Please dress comfortably and put some sunblock on. Bailey has some sunblock for you that she has today, and we'll also have there tomorrow. We're handing this to all the graduates.
Sydney, this is a good year too. If you wanted to, you can march with the processional, or if you would prefer, you can take pictures of your kids walking under the bell tower and then sneak in the back and just get on the stands. That's the stands, the sidewalk. So it's up to you what you'd like to do.
And Mindy, one more time, where do we meet? Where do you want us?
Charles Hunter Room in the Hunter Conference Center, 8:30 to 9:30 is the breakfast. I realize most of you won't be there at 8:30. We will move at 9:30, so please be robed by about 9:15.
We will have masks for everyone.
We will have a choice of red, gray, or black SUU masks for everyone. The trustees' robes are a little more orange than the red masks are, so perhaps choose something that matches better.
Will you be giving guests masks?
We're giving guests, graduates, everybody who enters. Masks are required, so please set the example tomorrow. Your chairs are actually spaced about 2 feet apart, so the regulations are 6 feet of social distancing, and when that's not possible, wear a mask. We're doing both, but we have 2 feet of social distancing for your chairs and all the graduates. We have sanitation stations around. We have hydration stations. We're doing temperature checks of every one of the graduates. And we have to know every guest and every graduate and where they're sitting, what chair they were in, and how to contact them. So.
Wow. This is not.
What a nightmare.
We're hoping they comply by filling out the contact tracing form, which has been numbered and left on their seats with a new pen. So we don't have to share pens.
You're amazing. Wow.
This is, Mindy and her team.
And facilities and academics. I mean, we have so many people involved in this process to make it work. And it's been remarkable to watch come together. But I dare say this will be the most iconic graduation in that setting with masks. But the quad is gorgeous right now. It looks stunning up there.
Who was that masked man?
All of those masks.
And shock of all shocks. Stuart, you want to say anything about enrollment? Shock of all shocks. So
Yeah.
with, I'll do the build-up.
Yeah.
Let me do this.
Drum roll, please.
With the national, we are on, what, an 8-year slide of enrollments in higher ed across this country. So each year over the last 8 years, there's been less people enrolled in higher ed than the year before. I think it's 8 years. And the projections for this fall were that everybody should expect to be as much as 20% down, based on surveys of students and everything that these national survey companies.
And about 85% of the campuses around the country are doing.
85% are in. Okay, go ahead.
So as of this week, we are projecting that we could be as high as 13.8% up in total headcount. And a lot of that has to do with retention as well. It's one thing to bring them in, it's another to keep them. And so I appreciate the great work of Jared's team, the provost, the faculty play a key role in that as well. Budget related, which is what helps us get funding at the legislature, we're projecting 9.4% up. It's been amazing to see that students they haven't melted like we thought. In-state will be up 19%. Out of state, 7.7%, and our transfers are up 38%. So we've been nervous all summer that things were going to melt. We hand them off to Jared's team when they deposit. And why don't you speak to the efforts you've made to get them enrolled?
It's a team effort. It's everybody going like crazy, trying to ensure that these students feel comfortable coming here, and those who were here to continue to come back. We have done more outreach this summer than we've ever done by probably 3 or 4 or 5 times in terms of the number of phone calls, text messages, emails, social media interactions, and it's paid off. If Stu and I have said to each other, if you had told us back in February or March that we would be up going in August, we would have said, no way we'll ever be up. And so for the new student enrollment to be up in the way that it is, for our returning student enrollment to be up, it's absolutely remarkable. And I think it says a lot about this institution. and the relationship students have with individuals at this institution and also relationship with the institution collectively, and feeling a sense of a connection and home here. I'm so incredibly proud of all the people on my team that have worked so hard, and grateful for the folks all across campus. But when we look at retention numbers, and I think this group knows, it's a measure of the first to second year students that come back, but it's a national measure that we compare ourselves against each year, and also a measure that is collectively discussed on the national levels. But we're at an all-time high right now, projected toward an all-time high for this institution. There's no reason that our institution should be at an all-time high for retention rates, given where we are. I think it says a lot about the staff and the students, and our willingness to try to be open and receptive to them coming back in the fall. So.
And our sincere hope that there's not big breakouts and it all unravels back.
That's the thing that makes us, we were talking earlier, I was talking with a colleague that kind of leads up our retention efforts. That's what scares me. In most years, we start around, or historically, we've started around August 24th, 25th. And this year, we are going to be one of the latest universities starting across the country. Many moved up their academic calendar to begin now starting this week or next week so that they can be done by Thanksgiving. Others are starting in 2 or 3 weeks. We don't start for now yet another month. If there's massive breakouts on all these other campuses in the next month, that's going to hurt our enrollment numbers, I think. So we'll just hang on tight.
September 9th.
We start September 9th.
It's the latest it will ever be because we start the Wednesday after Labor Day. And Labor Day is, the first day of September is Tuesday. So it's the latest
it could ever be.
It could ever be.
So if we have massive breakouts on other campuses, it's going to be, we'll have to hold on tight.
Well, and one of the challenges in fall, particularly when we have growing numbers, is classes. And John and his team worked exceptionally well to make sure that we've got the right classes.
Yeah, it's never gone smoother than.
Oh, this year, the fact that it's been awesome. The academic leadership on this campus and their response to our needs for more classes. John has been so helpful in that, and the deans have been awesome. It's been a lot of fun.
It's been so fascinating because advising always knows exactly what we need. We just haven't had processes in place to communicate those to the deans. So we circulate a list to all academic leaders and advising leaders every morning of every student that's registered for the semester. Every class that's being offered, the percent full, the seats that are open, whether they're in general education or not. And then everybody has access to the same information. And so a few times a week, we get a list from our lead advisor that'll say, these sections are 97% full, these are 93. We have 27 people who need seats in this area. We get that meeting, the deans, they're adding sections back and forth. We've got a system in place that's just working in it. It's a really a very good team effort.
And they've implemented a uniform. You guys are matching.
Oh.
It wasn't intentional.
End of the room, that's a uniform.
Maybe 2 more numbers that they might be interested in, and that is that our summer online was up 101%. Our fall point in time is up 87% online. And I'm, again, appreciative of what the provost is doing to expand our online offerings. I think these numbers will continue to grow sizable numbers.
So is that up from last year?
Yeah.
Okay. So at this point.
Summer to summer, and then point in time to point in time.
That was online.
Online.
But the summer programs, I mean, we had huge numbers increase there, but that didn't come to fruition.
We had,
No, that huge enrolled and they canceled.
We were projecting to be up like close to 100%, but we were up a little bit.
And we made, the revenues were strong. Marv, remind me what we made in the summer, over projected. It was, you remember that number? I know it helped us.
It helped us with our budget challenges this year to have a strong.
More than $1 million. We were over.
Would you mind talking for a second about the Levitt report and the masks and concerns there?
Yes. What we know for certainty is that when all the students return, some of them will have COVID-19. We will not know who they are, but we know that some of them will have it. So we're ready. We've got a whole bunch of dorms set aside. We're going to expand into a motel in town if we need to.
Quarantine purposes. For quarantine
For
purposes.
quarantine, yeah. If the student gets sick, we're going to invite them to go home. If they can go home, that's great. If they can't go home, then we've got a place for them. This has been a significant effort. Mindy and Jared were working, and then when John came, kind of shifted a little bit, but it has been, we're ready. We're as ready as we can be, and after spending months and months and months with preparation, we're excited to try it out. But there is, obviously, there's some challenges, you know. Fortunately, most of our students are young and healthy. We're not running a senior citizen center. But to say that, we're not taking anything lightly. This is the number one priority is that our students have a place where they can learn in a safe and healthy environment. And if it's not safe and healthy, they can't learn. That's our mission. A lot of things will be different. A lot of things will be similar. I think we'll have choir, if they'll be in the ballroom, and everybody will be 10 feet apart. It's kind of hard to say, but they're going to do their best. And we might have some athletics, we might not. We don't know. But we might see a surge in outdoor recreation activities. But even that, we need to be careful about social distancing. The challenge, of course, is that we're so interconnected as a student body, sharing dorms and kitchen, cafeteria space, that we have to be 100 times more vigilant than anybody else. And I think we've got the process put together. So,
Do you have something on the website for like
yeah,
best practices or?
We have a website dedicated just to being open for fall. You can access it from our SU homepage, and at the bottom it has almost every category of campus. You click on that, it'll give you the protocols and practices for each area. We update those on a regular basis. We've got a task force that's working, meets twice a week, talks through all the frequently asked questions that have come in, responses to it. We're fielding questions from students, community members, and faculty, and posting all of those there. So we've got our processes are in place and they're working well. We're just not sure exactly what the student body is going to look like at the beginning of the year. We're prepared for almost any type of issue.
I think this has been our busiest summer ever. Which makes it particularly challenging when somebody meets us in the grocery store and says, "So how's it like being retired?" Punch in the nose. No, it's exciting though because we feel like we're ready. We're prepared. Let me mention three things. This is actually, despite the fact that this is a very stressful year in many ways. This is the best time to be in higher ed ever, because stress equals opportunity. And in the same way that this has been the best fundraising year for the Utah Shakespeare Festival, this is going to be the best year for higher education as we respond to all of the pressures in the best way that we can. No one comes into a pandemic, recession, and riots and leaves the same. We will either come out of this stronger or weaker, and we're going to come out of this stronger. We've seen so many pieces of evidence of that. The additional number of online degree programs that we've seen over just the last several months. I see three things. One, cost. We are more sensitive to cost now across the country, I think, than we've ever been. That's partly because of the recession, and it's partly because of the riots. But we need to make sure that everyone has a chance. We're more focused on access than we've ever been as a higher education community. And that plays into how do we find opportunities for people to get a degree who otherwise couldn't. Those people like the single mothers in Canap waiting tables and have no means of getting an education except for something that's online. There's 36 million Americans that have some college but no degree at all. They've been left behind, and this is a great time to help them complete that. And this is also, so the cost, access, and then equity for everybody. I was going through our data, and I wish I had a couple other pieces, and I don't. But if you take the regional universities in Utah, that's the four of us: Dixie, SUU, UVU, and Weber. And we can throw in Utah State, but not Utah. If we look at those schools, Hispanic and Latino students are graduating from SUU at a higher rate than any of the others. And Utah is only ahead of us by 1 percentage point. The Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islanders graduating from SUU at a higher rate than any other school, including the University of Utah. American Indian and Alaska Native, higher at SUU than any other school, including the University of Utah. Black and African American, I've got a problem with my numbers, so I can't tell you one way or the other on that. Among the regional universities in Utah, the graduation rate for women is higher by far. But part of that is because our graduation rate is so much higher than the other regional schools. Our graduation rate is almost 50% higher than a school to the south, and almost 50% higher than the school to the immediate north, and the same amount to the third one. So this is a great place to go to get completions. Anyway, those are the things that we're focused on: cost and access and helping everybody succeed. We think that we're doing the right things in those areas. You'll recall that we haven't raised tuition or fees in 2 years. We've actually lowered online fees. Provost is working on some initiatives that would make online far more accessible than it even is now. It's an exciting time. It really is an exciting time. And I'd love to answer any questions anybody might have about any of this, or suggestions, comments, what we can do.
We appreciate all that you are doing and have the people active during this period of time and work through it so well. Congrats to Stuart and Jared and others. I think this is a wonderful position to be in. Grateful for it. I mean, it's a lot. We've had a lot of challenging discussions.
And I add the cabinet to that also. I make the comment very boldly that most of the companies I ran, I would have died to have had this cabinet. So really appreciate all your efforts.
We could have been bought too.
still can?
We're not retired yet.
Every group has them. Why don't you give us a market share number, Stuart?
So we've hovered the last few years around 5, 6, 5, 7% of in-state students, and about, I think last year we were 49% of college-bound students, high school students, applying to SU. This year we had 64% of all college-bound Utah students apply to SU, and we increased our market share to 8.4%. Whether we can replicate that is another question, but we'll save that for next year.
That's a substantial increase in market share and substantial growth. Yeah.
President, you just mentioned some really wonderful success completion statistics. Folks might wonder about our chief diversity officer.
Oh,
maybe that would be worth talking through.
It's
I think that could potentially be connected to our success.
Thank you for reminding me of that. We, as you know, Dr. Sabala has left for another opportunity. What we have decided to do, and in meeting with the Faculty Senate leadership and the Staff Association leadership, we're organizing, and the student program, we're organizing a diversity inclusion advisory committee on campus. And that committee is going to help us review our strategic plan, structure our activities, and help us in the search for our next chief diversity officer. We've got the advisory committee all picked out. We just haven't received, we haven't asked them all yet if they'll be members. Thanks for reminding me. It's an important part of what we're doing. We continue to grow in diverse populations. We're like 65 different countries represented here. And I'm looking at Newman. 6 years ago, we had no students from Africa. And now we're getting close to 100. And really proud of that. So Newman is a wonderful example for the other students, and he's been very engaged and very helpful as we work through this year. It would be a shame if we didn't learn something from the pandemic, the recession, and the riots to make ourselves much, much better. Newman and I, along with our Dean of Students, spent a couple hours with our Black Student Union, talking through their questions and their worries and stresses. And I felt like it was a really wonderful conversation. The sad part of it is that we have challenges here that we shouldn't have and that would probably surprise you all. The minority students face things that I thought we had moved beyond. But they're here, and they're coming in greater numbers, and they're graduating in high rates. And we're excited to try to take care of them and learn from them. I've said this various times, but the first time I met an African American was when I was working as I think 14-year-old or 15 years old. And I think I was cheated. I thought my childhood was cheated a little bit because I grew up in a community where diversity was defined by the white non-Mormons. And there were 2 of them in my elementary school. So it's this diversity that we have on this campus is one of the wonderful things about this campus, and we're working hard to make sure that they're successful and that we take notice of how we can be more service to them. And then there are other kinds of groups. Diversity is broader than race or ethnicity. We have a lot of students who are first-generation students from very rural places. This is a little scary and intimidating for them. And they're very unprepared to come here. And we have a lot of single mothers. Happy to report, or single parent fathers. Happy to report that we're ready to go with the Child Care Center, Stephanie, and the, I think I'm forgetting, the Teddy Bear Center?
Teddy Bear Den?
Teddy Bear Den. Stephanie was a huge part of that. The Teddy Bear Den is ready to go. We don't have shelves, but I think they're moving things in.
Awesome.
So I think my wife was talking to your daughter.
We have to have Sydney tell what the Teddy Bear Den is.
Oh, in time, I'll take like 1 minute. It's just an organization for the people that have either had some kind of addiction or haven't cared for their kids in some respect or another. It's under the heading of the March of Dimes. My daughter did it in high school for a program and it's just kept it going, just is graduating tomorrow with her RN degree, and this has just kind of been her baby, no pun intended. But what's neat about it, it's not any type of a handout. It's you go to your doctor, if you're taking your prenatal vitamins, you get points. You go to the Teddy Bear Den where things have been donated, you can buy diapers or wipes or new clothes or baby bags, and then once you have the baby, if you go to wellness checks, you go a week without smoking, a week without doing drugs, a week with taking, following a nutritional guide, whatever it is your doctor always given you before and after birth. You get points, and you use those points to buy these things. And we were able to get it inside the Child Care Center, so it'll be right there handy with all of these moms and dads that don't have the ability, and at the same time train them to take care of the kids. So it's really a neat little program.
You'll all be invited to the groundbreaking or to the ribbon cutting. And the ribbon cutting is on September 11th. But the playground equipment is in, the building's done, people are moving things in. It looks like it was intended to be a child care center. It's going to change the lives and help stop intergenerational poverty in this community. We're really happy about it. I'm not sure what else to say. It's the day before commencement, so I am bursting with pride in my team, in the students, grateful to all of you. This is a great time. And we talk about commencement being exciting. I think we can't overlook the fact that Mindy was willing to take it on. Because we could have easily just said, we're going to do a virtual commencement. But no, why not do 5 times as much work as a normal commencement?
Takes a village.
40-hour-a-week allotment. Thank you, Mindy.
Sure. Takes a village. I'm telling you, all of campuses had to come together for this one.
Well, we're very appreciative.
We've worked through our budget challenges with Marvin, and it looks like if enrollments hold, we may not have more budget challenges this year. That would be
Gentlemen,
the best.
that's all right. I'll ask you a question anyway. It's not. At the break, I asked the president about Emory's placement and just that process. Could you talk a little bit about what we're looking for there? How do you anticipate approaching that? Obviously, that world is getting simpler. It's a complicated thing. It's a critical role, obviously. So, what are we looking for there, and how are we looking at it?
So we're looking for someone like her. It's too bad Anne-Marie isn't here to hear this, but Anne-Marie has given up vacation time and worked long hours. We've had a couple periods of time in the last 5 years when we've had some significant challenges. Those of you that recall our transition away from upper limb aviation, that was a very significant challenge. Anyway, she's worked very hard. In order to be successful as general counsel for university, you have to be the type of person willing to put in well over 40 hours a week. You have to be the type of person that's willing to draw up personal things on a moment's notice, because crises don't come scheduled. Well, got to be able to respond to a whole variety of legal type issues, everything from HR to contracts to litigation, just everything. We don't litigate our own cases. The AG's office has exclusive right to litigate, but it's just a very, very significant job. We're a $200 million corporation, and this is the general counsel to help us with everything that one might expect. I can ask her the legalities of the Big Sky Conference, saying whether we can or can't play non-conference games, or we've got international students traveling, and I mean the scope is very large, so it's a significant role. We're advertising for the position now. She will be Senate confirmations will be mid-September. I don't remember the date. 20th of September, and then she'll shift into the job. The day that she's confirmed, she's a judge. And then she'll close down a couple affairs and move on. Because she was our attorney, we will not ever appear in front of her. So we haven't gotten any goodwill that's going to help. But, yeah. We're advertising for the job, and it'll be a major search. I think it's out now, Mr. Bailey. Bailey's headed up the effort to get that started. And it's a 30-day window for people to apply. It'll be advertised in various places. If you know any possible candidates, send them our way. The search committee is comprised of 2 old lawyers and a dean of students, I think, though I'm not sure that I've asked anybody yet. You okay being on the search committee, Stuart? Yeah, I think Stuart and I and Heather Ogden on the search committee. Okay.
There we have it. Yeah.
That's what I listed.
Friday afternoon gift.
I might have forgot to tell you.
Best gift ever.
All right. Any other questions for the President before we put a vote on this and come to conclusion? Anything else, President, you want to talk about?
No, I think that's, I don't think I forgot.
I would encourage everyone to get to know Newman. What a remarkable young man, and what a great leader, and just looking for what's going to come from him in the discussions we've had over the last couple of months. So make sure you get a chance to get to know him. As we're talking about understanding, seeking first to understand, I was by a dear friend invited to read Just Mercy. And it gave me some just beautiful insights. So I suggest that that's a great book that we could all read also. It's a really good book. Any other comments from our trustees or any other questions before we wrap this up?
Just a reminder of what time we'll be there tomorrow, and then also when our next trustees meeting is. It's around the student induction.
Yeah, it's actually at the end of September, aligning with homecoming.
Not
Whatever
homecoming.
that looks like.
We're student induction, but we're invited to that, correct?
Yeah,
Yes.
the new student induction is on Tuesday the 8th, and that's when they do the bell tower tradition. And then that Friday, so that's on Tuesday, and then that Friday the 11th is when the ribbon cutting is for the child care center.
And then the trustees meeting
Is the 25th of September.
Eddie, would you mind making sure we get an email with just all those details and refresh us all and maybe even the calendar invite? That'd be great.
Yep.
All right, well, let's wrap this up. Would someone please put forward a motion to close the meeting? Motion to adjourn, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. No opposed, so we can wrap on this thing. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks, Mike.
And Debbie.
That was like.